And you've started with the fact that you're from London. My mother
Yep.
was born and raised in London.
Okay.
She when she came to Israel in the 70s, it was after finishing her studies at the London School of Medicine. She and then she did her internship here in Israel. But we have a problem to begin with. I was looking a little bit up, researching you up, and I hear that you're an Arsenal fan, where my family is Tottenham. My grandfather is a fan of Tottenham, so we already are. We have a bit of a conflict there.
Not as
But
much as you think. I
oh,
have I have tickets at both Arsenal and Spurs. I like football.
oh, very good, very good. As far as the tickets go, my grandfather, late grandfather, he passed away many years ago. He complained that he only had daughters. He had my mother and her two sisters, so he had no one to take to see the football matches. So
Yeah.
luckily, when my father and my mother got engaged, he finally had someone to take to see the games. Anyway, that's a bit about that. And Richard, you are not a professional musician or a singer, right? You don't
Correct.
come from that, but you did embark upon this amazing
Project.
project, uh, continuing project, I should say. We sing, we stay together. And what? So if you're not a musician, tell us a little bit about yourself. So what you are? What are you?
I'm a Jewish guy. I'm a secular Jewish guy. And I grew up and I'm an Englishman. And I'm an Englishman ultimately before anything else. And I went to Christian schools. Grew up as a secular Englishman with Jewish ancestry. And I was bar mitzvahed like all of my friends. And I never understood anything I was doing. And it was a very strange feeling going into synagogues and not knowing what was going on, not understanding anything. And this was something that was in the back of my mind for years and years. I knew more about the Christian religion, just having gone to normal day schools, than I did about my own religion. And
By
it
the
was
way,
some,
if you're already talking about being bar mitzvah and not knowing what you're saying there, uh, are you familiar with the American TV show Frasier?
yes.
Right. There is an episode where Frasier's son is bar mitzvah, and he
Uh-huh.
wants to impress like the community. So he asks the technician at the radio. Both of them have the technician is kind of enamored with Rose, and he asked the technician. They have a bit of a feud, but he asked him to teach him Hebrew so he could speak to the crowd at the synagogue in the bar mitzvah. And the technician who doesn't like Frasier too much teaches him Klingon. So he ends up standing at the bima and speaking Klingon to everybody. Yeah. So
Well,
so he,
listen, that's what I would have done. So, for
right.
example,
So that was Klingon to many
yeah.
of your generation.
Well, that's how I felt. So, okay, so I grew up, we were taught like, if I'm honest, we were taught like robots. We were taught to mouth the sound of words. We didn't understand it, so we couldn't appreciate it. And at the back of my mind, I always realized that there must be a lot more to it, and it must be something, because our people have contributed a lot to the world. It's very positive, and I knew that much. And it was something that didn't go away. And eventually, one day, I was in. Funny enough, I was in. I felt very Jewish, so I was very Zionistic, learning a lot about Israel. I went traveling in the Far East, and I was walking down a mountain in Kashmir, and I was watching lots of Jewish boys going to different temples and different things because they were all searching for something, and I was following, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Traveling in Kashmir and seeing every other Jewish boy trying to search the meaning of life
Of life,
before they read Douglas Adams'
Exactly.
42, right?
We
The
were,
answer.
we were all going, searching here, there, and everywhere, and it just the back of my mind, I just thought this doesn't make any sense. I don't even know the first thing about my own religion, and I know that we've contributed a lot, and I know it's very positive. So by the time I got to the bottom of the mountain, and we were walking down a glacier, I had decided that I was going to learn about my religion. And so it was the Hebrew. I'd already started learning Hebrew, And it was through the Hebrew, learning how to speak just modern Ivrit. I remember walking into a shul sometime later, opening up the Siddur and going, wow, because I suddenly understood what I was reading. It wasn't just this text that meant absolutely nothing to me. And I then realized what I and all of my friends had been missing out on. We just didn't know the language. We had never, ever been taught the language. So it was the equivalent of us going to school and going to French lessons or Spanish lessons and coming home and telling our parents, oh, well, they taught us how to mouth the words, but not to actually understand them. Well, our parents would have gone crazy and then phoned the school and complained. But for some reason, when it was Hebrew and Judaism, they never did that. And
I think there is a very, very interesting, unique linguistic phenomena. I'm a teacher of language, so it's very interesting that Jews in the diaspora, even those who, because usually when you acquire a language, okay, you acquire first the ability to speak and then to read. And it's quite the other way around for Jews around in the diaspora, because again, even if they're observant or practicing, they learn how to read because they have to follow the Siddur, okay? But they don't learn so much. I'm talking even about the observant ones. They're not really, they don't really follow they don't know the language oftentimes. Again, some of them do, some of them have a knack for it and it's easier for them and they can deduce and so forth, but they're not learned, they're not taught in that way.
I agree and I disagree. Because I was always interested and I wanted to learn, I was throwing myself into all types of places. So, for example, I was going to learn with Satmar Hasidim in Stamford Hill.
My family comes from Stamford Hill. Some of my family is still there.
Exactly. So you'll know. So these guys, and they accepted me. They knew I was secular. They knew. I mean, the first time I pitched up.
Oh, come on! You could not pass as a Satmar Chassid.
Well, they knew who I was. Anyway, cut long story short, they do understand every single word and every letter of absolutely everything that they read. They know it back to front. And the only reason I was able to study with them and enjoy it was because I had been learning Hebrew. And they made the effort with me to pronounce it in Ivrit, in modern Hebrew. And even they...
That I have to live to see, because Satmar Hasidim, is the farthest thing one can think of from a modern Israeli standpoint. For the crowd, they don't know exactly the subtleties. They might not be aware. The Satmar Rebbe, okay, the rabbi, the chief rabbi of this Hasidic group, he pays anyone in Israel who is willing to give their ID card whenever there is elections. He is willing to pay you money. If you're not voting in the elections, you have to give them your ID card, and they keep it for the day of the elections, and you take it afterwards, and you can get money from them for not voting.
Yeah, no, I know. Look, a lot of them are like that. The people, obviously, I was dealing with were a little bit more relaxed because they were
right.
Okay, but they made an effort and they did accept that pronouncing it in modern Hebrew was much clearer. Okay, and I was able to, so I would respond and I say, so what was that word? And I would repeat it in the modern Hebrew and they would say, yes, that's what it is. And then they would sometimes, obviously, in order to help me go, this is what the word is. So they knew, so I kept learning and learning and learning and learning. And eventually, because ultimately it was from sadness at seeing all of my friends disappearing off the Jewish radar. I thought, you know what, I know why they don't go to synagogue. If you don't go to synagogue at all, if you have no connection with Judaism whatsoever, eventually the community dies. It doesn't work.
And this is, by the way, another point of difference between us here in Israel and Jews in the diaspora. Again, and I'm saying it, my family came from the diaspora. My mother, as I said, grew up in London. I currently have a brother living in London, working for Google there. And one of the big differences is that you, as a secular Jew, are talking about or talking about the fact that your friends kind of drifted apart, generationally kept on drifting apart away from their Jewishness. But here in Israel, even the secular Jews are so the street, the public culture is so infused with Judaism. Your Shabbat is Shabbat. You know, I'm not saying there are no people driving their cars. Obviously, there are. Your holidays, you know, so it doesn't matter even if you're in a public secular school, the holidays are the same holidays. The customs are the same customs. I'm not saying many of them don't come to synagogue. That's correct, and I think that your project.
But you're right. But you're obviously right. There's more than two Jewish worlds. But if you wanted to split it easily, you have the diaspora and you have Israel. Israel is the normalization of the Jew. Okay, they're like Englishmen or Frenchmen or Albanians or whatever. They are a country. Most Israelis have no concept of anti-Semitism. They have no concept.
Right. That I have there. Again, sorry to disturb you with a funny story.
Yeah.
I was brought up in Israel. You know, born and raised here. Never felt this concept of anti-Semitism, which I knew, you know, from history, from, you know, learning about it and never experiencing it. And I was 21, 22 after my military service. I went to the States, and I took the Greyhound from New York to family that I still have in Cleveland. And I took the Greyhound, I go, out of the bus, and there is a guy there, and I had the baseball cap on, and there is a guy there in the bus station, and he is, begging for money, and I see him, and he seems to be addicted to something, so I didn't want to give anything. He said to me, "Oh, Jew, you cannot take the money to the grave," or something like that. And for me, that was so funny. You know, I couldn't but laugh my behind off because I never experienced it. And for me, it was, wow, finally I get to be, I did not feel intimidated. I'm a big guy, you know. He was not intimidating in any way. It was funny for me. It was crazy. I know it's a crazy story.
It's a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. If you turned around to an Israeli and said, "Oh, by the way, Jews have got big noses," the reaction would be, "What drugs are you on?" And it would be the same as me turning around to an Englishman in Swindon and saying, "Englishmen have got big noses." Okay. They would be like, "What are you on?" You know, that's the difference. Now, Israelis and diaspora Jews, they don't get each other. They can't understand each other because a diaspora Jew thinks and understands what it means to be a minority. Okay. An Israeli doesn't get it until he leaves Israel and then experiences it. And then he goes, "Oh, wow." Anyway, so the project had nothing to do with Israelis. They don't need anything. They understand everything better than me. Even if they say that they don't, and they pretend that they are so anti-religious, they still have heard somebody saying a blessing, a bracha.
They cannot avoid it. Once they speak Hebrew, the Hebrew is so deeply rooted in Jewish sources, you cannot detach the two. It's inseparable. Even if people don't realize it at first glance, but almost every second word where you read the paper, you might be reading, I don't know what, it is deeply rooted in Jewish sources because Hebrew and Jewish sources just started the secularization of the Hebrew started yesterday, historically speaking.
Hebrew is the Jewish language. Hebrew is the source of everything, okay? And it's not Yiddish, which is a dialect of German. It's not Ladino, it is Hebrew. Hebrew gives access to absolutely everything. Now, I found that out because I learned basic Hebrew. So I was learning basic Hebrew, and all of a sudden, I opened up the Siddur, okay, which I used to call a Siddur, okay? I had no idea that Siddur meant order because it was the order of the prayers. I had no idea what anything meant. And all of a sudden, I started learning Hebrew and went, "Oh, wow. Oh, that's why it's called that. And that's why this." And everything suddenly started singing back to me. So I understood what my friends had all been missing out on. We'd never been taught the most basic of basics, which is language, understanding language. Now, for me, it was easy to learn language because my mother's French, so she brought me up speaking French. So I had French and English. I'd been to Germany, so I'd learned German, pretty good German. So it was easy for me to start learning Hebrew. And I suddenly saw how beautiful Hebrew was, the roots and everything. And all of our names, every one of our names in England practically is a Jewish name. So somebody says his name's Jonathan or a Simon or whatever. Well, it's a Jewish name. Jeremy, even Jeremy Corbyn, you've got to remind him.
Right.
By the way, you must be a nice
the
Jewish
irony
boy.
on that, right.
You know, so it's a fascinating language. And Judaism, and along with obviously the Greeks, well, it's the foundation of the West, isn't it?
Right. Hebrews, Greeks, and Romans are like streams that become together this river that we call Western culture.
Exactly, Western civilization. So it's Judeo-Christian civilization for a reason. So eventually, I realized I wanted to know more. I didn't want to be deprived of my heritage, and the Hebrew just made it easy for me to go into it. And then I decided one day. I said, "Well, listen, I can't go to synagogue. I just can't join in. I can't participate. What can I do to make it easy for myself and others to participate?" Now, I didn't need to research these other people because they were me, right? So there's no point in me researching myself.
Like-minded people.
Well, we were the same. We'd all grown up the same. We all went to synagogue and had sung Adon Olam instead of Adon Olam, and we didn't even know what it meant. We didn't even know what those two words meant. We knew nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. So I then said, okay, well, how can I put this to music? And there's a lot of it. And that's where it started. So I basically was looking around the world for years and years and years for inspiration, anybody who could help me. And I was calling people up in America, calling people up. And I was basically just sent packing by everybody. Nobody was interested. And I went onto websites. And then I found one man in Israel, because I hadn't been looking in Israel for whatever reasons. I had my own prejudices. I thought that in Israel it would be very functional, very practical, in, out, shake it all about, and you're out of synagogue.
By the way, in most cases it is like that. It's if you go on a weekday in my father's synagogue to get all the morning service in 20-25 minutes, it's really, this is how it is. By the way, especially among the Ashkenazi Jews, with the Sephardic Jews, amazingly, though your project is very European in nature and very Ashkenazi, not Ashkenazi like diaspora, but Kalibach at the end of the day is Ashkenazi music in a sense, not traditional Ashkenazi, but it's not Eastern in that sense. Sephardic Jews have more time. I don't know why, but you go to a regular weekday morning service in a Sephardic shul, you get an hour service. It's crazy.
Okay, but I have to come back at you on that. What I've done is, I've used the art scroll Ashkenaz Sidur for the words, okay, and there's not that much difference with the Sephard, okay.
But no, not Sephard. I'm not dividing Ashkenaz and Sephard. I was referring to Mizrahi, okay,
Eastern, okay. But all the pronunciation is 100% modern Ivrit.
Right, you're right. Okay. And that's one of the beautiful things, guys. I wholly recommend, because sometimes the material that you would have over the internet is with Ashkenazi pronunciation. And Richard does an excellent, beautiful work in you wouldn't believe that he is English in a sense. In some cases, he is pronouncing it exactly as I would pronounce it, following the standard Israeli pronunciation. Again, without getting into the whole history of it, how we come to such a pronunciation, but his pronunciation is exactly how Israelis would pronounce it.
Yeah, and the reason for that is it means it's easy to understand, because obviously, because it's a spoken language, again, you have to have clarity, and that's the beauty of it. And so that was the whole idea of this, was using melodies, updating them, applying melodies that made sense to the meaning of the prayers, making sure that the words were all positioned correctly so that they made sense when you sang them, and also because you understood them, to be able to emphasize the meaning, because some prayers are sad, some are happy, some are generous, some are loving, some are, they're all different types of prayers, and they're so beautiful. That's the amazing thing. The prayers are so beautiful that they need to be sung. And that's what I wanted to do. And I found that when I was
right, the beauty of art in general is connecting the form and the content, be that in prose, in poetry, or in music. Marrying the right form, the right music with the right content, and that's beautiful. And I enjoyed listening to many of your melodies, and I certainly pay attention to the fact that it was done in a calculated manner. It's not just, oh, let's get a melody and let's get few words and match them together.
Yeah, it was Steve Ginsburg up at the Carlebach Synagogue in Sfat who helped me, because I went to, because originally I contacted him and said, look, I'm looking for some help. I'm looking for some inspiration. I need melodies. I need something. And he said, okay, I know what you want. And he sent me some stuff by email, and it wasn't what I wanted, but he was prepared to help. So I flew out.
Just a second, a word about Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, because I don't know that many of our listeners are familiar with his work. So Rabbi Carlebach was a phenomenon. Okay, he was a phenomenal person. He was a rabbi. He was a musician, and he was a person whose affection and love for humankind, any person, was simply generational. He would go around prisons in America. The meeting the maximum security prisons. He would go and he would hug every person there. Be that a killer, a drug dealer, you name it. He would go and he would hug them one after the other and sing with them and speak with them. And that's as a person within the Jewish world, he was able to touch people with his melodies. And he said, I have a blessing. The blessing that I have is that I'm not a very good singer, he said. So, yeah, he said, so people, when I sing, if someone has a beautiful voice like an angel and he sings, everybody gets quiet. Nobody wants to interfere with a beautiful singing. But I don't have such a beautiful voice, so everybody sing along with me. And he was bringing people closer to their identity and closer to Judaism by his melodies. And he said, with two chords, he had.
But you got to remember, the vast majority of the secular world have never heard of him.
Right. I know. This is why I'm doing this.
They've never heard of him. That's the problem. Because it was beautiful, but it was Hasidic, and it was too much. It was too close, so it didn't translate to people like me. So for me, it was, I've got to put it in a format that you could be from China, you could parachute in from Mars, and you could learn it. And
right. Your version is amazing at that. In my opinion, it's really, first of all, Carlebach had his pronunciation. He was born in Germany and he moved to America, so he had a bit of a German-American accent there, and he would sing in Hebrew, Yiddish, English. He was interesting. But yours, indeed, and I wholeheartedly recommend everybody to go up and look it up. I'll put the link to your YouTube channel, so everybody can. Come again?
Yeah, or just listen to it on Spotify or anywhere.
Or Spotify or iTunes or whatever.
We Sing, We Stay Together. You just search We Sing, We Stay Together, or you go to the website.com and that will give you links. But the whole idea, exactly what you're saying, is it's there for everybody. Anybody can listen and learn. And whilst I was doing it, because I wanted to be able to appeal to anybody, we wrote the book with all of the phonetics, and we translated it so that it was in modern English, easy to understand. So we did the phonetics, and we then translated it, and we then made that available in German and French and different languages. Again, all of it is free to download from the website. So if you're even Mandarin Chinese, you can go to the website, download the phonetics and everything free of charge. If you want to buy the book, obviously you have to buy it from Amazon or whatever. But that was the idea, to make it accessible to everybody. The beauty of Carlebach and a lot of the Hasidim singing is that it's beautiful, but it's so related to their community that unless you're part of that, you can't access it. And the rest of us were disenfranchised. We were kept out of the party, basically. And this was for people like me to say, we can join the party. And I've had people and from Uganda and Nigeria, Jewish communities in Uganda and Nigeria, sending me videos of them singing. And
I saw them on your Facebook page. Yeah. Beautiful, guys. Look it up.
Yeah, holding the books. They asked me for books, and obviously because money was tight, I've sent them books. Because even though I've sent them the phonetics, but because I wanted to help them, I've sent them books. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of money sending to Uganda. Okay. But they appreciate it, and they're all out there learning it and singing because they're happy to sing. It's beautiful, and watching them sing is fantastic.
Indeed, and doing it, I'm sure it took much time and much resources.
7 years. Took me 7 years. Look, let's be blunt. There is 2 hours, 17 minutes of music. It wasn't. I looked at it as a all or nothing. This is the service. I started from Nishmat Kol Chai, and I went to the Adon Olam. It had to be the whole service so that anybody could walk in at any time and know where they are and follow it as a sequence. There was no point in having a prayer and then you're going to be sitting there like a lemon for the next 10 minutes and then another prayer that you could join in. You had to be able to join in and sing to every single prayer, or there was no point doing it. And I always had at the back of my mind, when I was younger, we used to buy LPs, and there might be 10 songs on the front and 10 songs on the back, and we only ever listened to 2 on the front and 1 on the back. And it was a waste. We always used to think, what a waste of money. We bought the whole album. So I didn't want that. I wanted every single prayer tune to be lovely. And that was the objective. And we never wavered from that. And the other thing that took so long was it had never been done before. And most of these prayers never had any tunes ever attributed to them. So we literally just got it to different levels, and we just kept repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and knocking it up a level each time until we did the final music, and then we did the whole thing again, and then we had to correct the Hebrew to make sure that the Hebrew was perfect. Because if you're learning from this, how could there be a mistake? I couldn't not allow there to be a mistake in any letter or anything. So that's what took so long. And even when I thought we'd finished, we'd listen to it and go, oh, did you hear the lamed? La. Was it clear enough? The la. It was, and so we'd have to redo the word or whatever. It drove us mad, but we had to get it right.
I'm sure. Listen, from a personal experience, I love Jewish ethnomusicology, and I wrote a piyut for birth of one of my daughters, and I had a singer. I'm not a very good singer, so I had a professional singer recorded, and it took, we're talking about 5 minutes, okay, and he's a professional, and so we went into a studio, and it took hours of recording and then editing, and luckily, I just joined a little bit at the end, and luckily the technicians are able to do miracles, and even someone who is half tone deaf like myself, could sound barely acceptable. So it's I just imagine the hours it took for us to get one 5 minutes work done, and doing the whole service more than 2 hours, and much of it took, and for a person who is not a native Hebrew speaker, on top of that, that's must have been like hours of student, like, I don't know,
Every
weeks of
week,
studio.
every week after work, 2, 3 times a week, we were in the studio. And we were in the studio up until midnight, and we just kept doing it. And I was listening to it in the car, and that's all I did for all those years. It was non-stop singing and singing and singing. But by doing that, things move into place and things become a lot easier, repetition. And that's what we did. And we always knew what we were aiming for. And I always used to be saying to Yossi, who I was working with, I said, Yossi, can the congregation follow that? Would they be able to do that? Would they be able to do this? Because it was never about me trying to be Frank Sinatra. It was, can they follow? Because this is a platform saying to them, there you go, guys. You harmonize it now. You make it better. Because when I hear some of the stuff coming back, it's already way better than I ever did. Because you've got other people, you've got, singing and putting their own love into it, and they're making it very, very beautiful. So the whole idea of this is an educational tool, a platform for other people to build from. So it's a contribution of melodies. That's what it is, a contribution of melodies for people to work from.
Right. When you say Yossi Yafe, right?
Yossi Yoffa was the musician and the studio that I worked with. So we basically drove each other mad for 5-6 years, because obviously...
Is he related to the Yafe who run the big synagogue in Jerusalem?
No.
The conductor of the... No?
No, he's a secular guy like me. He's an Israeli, obviously. I needed an Israeli because that was part of the help that I needed for the words and the pronunciation. But I had other Israelis helping me, and I was constantly asking people questions. So I'd bump into somebody and I'd ask them a question, and people used to think, well, this guy's a bit weird. Why is he asking me about the exact pronunciation of a particular word? But we had to keep doing this. We had to keep trying it out on people. So I would try something out on people in different places just to see their reactions, just to see if it made sense to them.
I'm just asking because there is an Eli Yafe, an Israeli conductor, very famous, mildly, I don't know, about very famous, learned musicology at the Hebrew University and conducted many orchestras in Israel, and is very big in Jewish music, and he runs the Central Synagogue in Jerusalem. So Yafe, yeah, it's a big family of German Jews.
He's Yossi Yoffe.
Yeah, Yoffe and Yafe. It's practically tomato of this case. So you went through all of that, and you put all of that over the internet, and you told us a little bit about how it was received and how you're getting people from all over the world. What are the most exciting and interesting reactions that you got of this project?
Look, I'm 54. So the first thing is, what the hell do I know about YouTube? What the hell do I know about half of these new things that are going on? I've got my own businesses, security, pumping systems and everything else. And all of a sudden, I'm in this world of music and everything else. So I'm dealing with all the big musical aggregators. And the reality is, I don't really know what I'm doing. I've already spent an absolute fortune, doing this. Cost me, we're talking hundreds of thousands to actually do this, when you think about the amount of time and everything else. And that's not including what it does to your business, to your other businesses, when you're investing so much time in it. But it had to be done. You've done it, labor of love. It's done. It's out there forever. It will outlive me. But I knew it was a long-term project. So now I've now got to figure out how we market it. So yes, there are all types of reactions. And the Satmar guy in Stamford Hill, he said to me, you need 2 pockets, Richard. You need 2 big pockets. You need a pocket, one pocket for compliments and an even bigger pocket for the criticisms, because obviously you're stepping into other people's worlds. You're a secular guy, and all of a sudden you're coming along with prayers and singing prayers. You're going to ruffle feathers. There are going to be people who aren't too happy as well. So he said to me, but you've done an absolutely huge mitzvah. He didn't say mitzvah, he said mitzvah. You got a fantastic mitzvah. So, and more people. So it can only grow. So yes, people are listening, and people are beginning to be, and I can see loads of people listening, and more people are listening, but I need other people to encourage others. But when I get a cantor or somebody in the States actually doing one of them, and then sending it to me, that's fantastic. When it's such a buzz. When people, the videos. So it's a long-term project. But the thing is, nobody has turned around and said, I don't like the music. Not one person. So I've had criticism about, what's this nusach? What's this way of doing it? This is different. This is not this is not us. Who are you to come along and do this? But nobody said, I don't like the melody.
Who moved my cheese, right?
Yeah. But nobody has said, I don't like the melody. And nobody has come back and said, you've said that word wrong, or your translation in the book is wrong. Nobody has actually said that there is an error. And believe you me, I'm pretty sure they would come back and tell me if they'd found an error. But there was so much pain went into checking this. So it's done, it's out there, and more people are listening to it. And you get kids doing it, and it's free. And people are beginning to download the sheet music and the phonetics. And the more they get used to it, once you learn a song, you never forget it. That's the beauty.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
So it's growing, and it's on the Israeli Ministry of Diaspora website now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so more and more people are getting involved, but people like yourselves, just share it to everybody. Just tell them,
that's what we're doing.
It's free. It's free. I keep telling people, if you all start listening on YouTube, and because obviously we're trying to get up the proper channel set up, takes forever to get these things set up properly. And I'm learning. I've just employed somebody to start working on the channel. So I'm not in any particular rush because it's going to be out there forever. But I just try to get people, just start sharing it. Just learn one prayer and send it in, and you'll encourage others. Okay, and that's what this is all about.
And what's your vision for ahead? So you've done the Shabbat morning service, and you've put it out there on the internet, on these various platforms, and people are listening to it.
I want to do more, but I'm not going to do more unless people take this on board and start using this, okay, and start singing. But I've got the blueprint for the Friday night. I've done it. The blueprint is ready. Okay, there are other things I want to do. Again, modern, accessible for everybody. I want to do things on tefillin, okay, showing people how to, because I know how I would want it presented to me as a secular Jew, okay. I want to help, but whether or not people want my help is another matter, okay.
Right. By the way, in that sense, some of the practical aspects of Judaism are, even to Israeli Jews, are quite far. I want to tell, again, a personal story. I had a friend over, a friend who was an officer with me in the military. He is now a doctor, intelligent guy, no doubt. He's an agronomist and a doctor. Don't ask. Anyway, it was Sukkot, and I said to him, come on, there is the 4 species, right? The lulav, So I'll give you, and you'll say the blessing, and you'll move it. He said, okay. And he said to me, so how do you, what do you do when you move the 4th species? So I said to him, this direction and that direction, and then upwards and then downwards. And he goes upwards and then downwards. Everything, he takes it upside down and everything falls, instead of going like this.
But for the secular world, it's like, what are they doing?
Right, sure.
People like me, when we were growing up, what are they doing? Or or somebody comes along and makes you put on tefillin in the middle of the street as if, well, that's going to suddenly make me religious and want to be this. I don't understand what I'm doing anyway. They had to have something. And I'm talking from me. I'm a secular Jew. Nobody's going to teach me how to be secular. No Englishman is going to teach me how to be an Englishman, because I'm an Englishman. I live my life like any other Englishman. Okay. Except listen.
It's almost 7 p.m. in England, and you're not in a pub, so I don't know about this. Right.
But what I'm trying to say is, I'm an Englishman, so I understand. So when a religious person comes to me, and starts talking to me, and he's talking about, and he's using words, the Shekhinah and the this and the that, and the Kfad Peh and everything. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Now, I know, because I understand now, because I've learned Hebrew and I've taught myself. Nobody taught me, I taught myself. So I'm trying to get across to these people how to approach these English people who are Jewish. Well, actually, they're Englishmen with Jewish ancestry. So in many ways, you need to approach them as if you were approaching any other Englishman, if you're going to tell them something about Judaism. So what I've done...
so sad, you know, it's sad, but
that's
it is
the reality.
The reality.
That's the reality. So what I did was, and I'll be honest with you, what I have done is still a big, big, big step for an Englishman, because it's like me saying to the average Englishman in Stoke, for example, Simon in Stoke, and say, there you go, Simon, here are all the Jewish prayers in Hebrew. Yeah, I've given you the phonetics, I've given you lovely music and blah, blah, this and everything else, but hey, there you go. But I might as well give it to him in Greek, or I might as well give it to him in Turkish, okay? It's a completely foreign language. So for a lot of people, it's way, way too late and they won't have the interest. But anybody who does have even a tiny bit of interest, this enables them to get on rung one of the ladder. That's what this was all about. So I'm saying, there you go. You don't need to know anything. No prior knowledge required. You can learn it. Just learn one prayer. So I tell them, just start with one. Just take a small one. And I tell them,
you know, they'll start with a Kaddish and then learn Aramaic instead of Hebrew.
Exactly.
You know the joke about this waiter in this Chinese restaurant in New York. So in New York, in Brooklyn, or in Borough Park within Brooklyn, there is a Chinese restaurant, and the Jewish owner, Hasidic Jew, and the person came in to sit, and Chinese waiter comes and he starts speaking Yiddish with the guests, you know, speaking Yiddish with them, showing them the menu and all in Yiddish, and, you know, speaking Yiddish, and he's Chinese. So the Hasidic guest comes to the Hasidic owner of the store, of the restaurant, and he says to him, how do you have your Chinese guys, you know, speaking Yiddish? So he says, shh, don't tell him, he thinks it's English.
You know, anyway, but listen, but the reality is, and I'll tell you, I'll be very blunt. You started off talking about football, okay? My generation, my grandfather was what we used to joke as the generation of Saturday morning in synagogue, Saturday afternoon at the Arsenal or Spurs, okay? So they would go to the football in the afternoon. My father's generation had no Jewish knowledge. We had even less than them. Very, very few of us go anywhere near a synagogue. And when we do, we don't understand what's going on. Synagogues have been closing all over the UK. There used to be synagogues in everywhere, even in small little places like Darlington and everywhere else. They're closing because they just don't have enough people going to them. And it's not just to do with assimilation and people just disappearing. People there's no interest. Unless we give people something so they can participate, they will never, ever, ever come back. And that's the reality. And I say it, people don't want to hear me say it, but am I going to go to synagogue on a Saturday morning if I can't join in? If somebody's mumbling the Amida, blah, 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 I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go. Now, I know the service word for word, back to front, inside out. I understand every
Now you
word.
do. You certainly do.
But I can't even understand them. I can't even follow the service. I don't even know where they are because they're mumbling. Right? So I don't want to go. So unless they do something, there won't be. All you're going to have are Orthodox religious Jews and all of the secular world will have disappeared in 30, 40, 50 years' time. That's unfortunately what's going to happen. Other than Israel, of course.
Yeah, let's hope there are no external circumstances that would drive Jews back to their Jewishness.
Well, that's happening. That's happening. I mean, that's already happening. I mean, the anti-Semitism in Europe has caused a lot of Jews to suddenly wake up, okay, who never thought about it. And a lot of them have gone to Israel. Jews in England have woke, like, what's going on? All of a sudden, there's and American Jews who have lived in a bubble for years and years and years and years. All of a sudden, they're having to wake up to this reality where you know. But the thing is, as Jews, we've lived a very strange history. You know, when people turn around and say that we control the clouds, okay, or we control the banks, or we control the media, we're like, what?
I just told that joke yesterday or the day before about the Jewish guy who was sitting and reading the Stürme. You know that one? Yeah.
We wanted some good news and we control everything.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But what I'm saying is, it's like, how do you, we're like so confused. It like, how do you answer it when somebody says something so stupid? He says, you control the clouds, and you're going, well, what am I supposed to say? No, we don't. It's just too stupid for words, okay? Or we control the banks, and I'm like, so somebody said it to me. I said, well, can you do me a favor? This is the phone number of my bank manager. Can you phone him? Let him know that I'm his boss, okay? What I'm trying to say is,
so who controls the banks in Israel? It doesn't help you, huh?
It's ridiculous. So the whole thing's mad. All this anti-Semitism, okay, is waking some people up because it's so crazy, okay, that we're being blamed. I mean, there are people in England blaming the Jews for the Chinese Wuhan coronavirus. I mean, you're like, what? I mean, it's like you can't actually get your head around it. It's just such madness. You know, but it is these external factors haven't gone away, and but it won't. It's not a positive. It's not a positive thing, and the only thing that will happen will some Jews will want to go to Israel, but Israel's not big enough for all those Jews anyway.
I don't know. We'll have to, Israel.
It's not big enough.
Depends how you define big, right? People here, let's say 72 years ago. We had, let's say, the population here multiplied itself by a factor of 15 around the last 72 years. Jewish population more than 10, that's for sure. And you know what? I'm not sure it's the only. I don't want Israel to be the only place that is available for Jews. I want Jews to be able to live all around the world, and yet to have the option to come to Israel, right? I live in Israel.
But you can't have a situation where Jews are totally disconnected from Judaism.
Right.
So, and people like me, what I'm saying is, what do I do in my life that is Judaic in any way? And that is true for the vast majority of American Jews, British Jews. Now, there's only so much. If you completely take every ounce of Judaism out of the Jew, you kill the Jew. It's as simple as that. So what I was doing was trying to give some things that made it accessible, at least, because if you learn a prayer, you learn a song prayer, you've got it for life, if you can sing it for life. So all I wanted was to say, right, learn one prayer, just one. And it wasn't necessarily even start with the Shema, start with something even shorter than that, okay? But learn one prayer. Now, if you've got nothing, you will eventually no longer be Jewish. You cannot live on smoked salmon bagels, okay? That is not going to keep you Jewish, right?
I relate to what you're saying. It's amazing. When people talk about Judaism, listen, I consume mostly American culture. Obviously Israeli culture, but American culture and American Jewish culture, and it's amazing how Judaism for many of the diaspora Jews starts and ends with salmon or bit of Yiddish there, you know, that the grandmother used to say, and nothing of the core practices or texts or learning or traditions. And it's not enough, as you said, it's not enough.
And they'll be gone. They'll be gone for good. And there's an easy solution to it. There's an easy solution. Schools should be teaching Ivrit, modern Hebrew, teaching them to speak Hebrew. You know,
in America, it's a little bit more complicated because of the question of church and state, and it's
a Jewish school that doesn't teach Hebrew. I mean, that's the Jewish language. It doesn't make any sense. Can you imagine going to the French lycée or a German school or a Spanish school in any country and they didn't teach the language? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Now, I know, again, I'm talking from somebody who came from a family that the concept of kosher didn't exist, okay? The concept of any Judaism did not exist, okay? We were Jewish, we felt Jewish, but that was it. So I'm coming from there. I learned Hebrew. The fact that I learned Hebrew, when I meet somebody who speaks Hebrew, I have an automatic connection with them. And when we speak in Hebrew, it is a bond. And Israelis have that bond everywhere in the world through the language, okay? And the most important thing that we need to start teaching in Jewish schools in the diaspora is איך לדבר בעברית. אני רוצה לדבר בעברית. אני רוצה קשר איתך, אני יכול לדבר איתך בעברית. I want to speak to you.
I can tell your mother is French by your chas.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, it changes everything, and you smile.
Definitely.
It is such a beautiful language.
Definitely. I want to tell you something that Dr. Avshalom Kol says. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Avshalom Kol, but he is one of the leading figures identified with Hebrew in Israel. And he says the following: we first lost the Hebrew, and then we lost our sovereignty. We first came back to the Hebrew and revived it, and then we came back to our land and our sovereignty. So he talks about, you know, the intrinsic connection between our linguistic identity and national identity. And I'm sure you'll enjoy, you know, listening to Dr. Avshalom Kol as well. I want to open it a little bit for a Q&A from the crowd if they want to ask anything. Georgie, I see your hand is up from Abu Dhabi, as we said.
Hi, Georgie.
Hello. Yes, 2 years back I was in UK. I was in the British Library, spending a lot of time taking notes for the Talmud, and I read a lot of time. And that is the time when I met Netanel Barak's professor also, Eli.
Right.
Yeah. My question to you is, there was a time when I don't know whether you will be connecting to that. The question is, in First Chronicles chapter 25, we see David casting the lots for the musicians and with the connecting with the temple worship, everything. So my question is that after that, did it continue maybe in the second temple or even for the temple to come? Does that paradigm fits into your what you're doing now, or this is entirely different?
Is that for me?
Yeah, that was for you. And let me kind of my job is to explain Georgie's questions.
I think Georgie's too intelligent for me.
Right. For all of us. So Georgie's asking, is there any historical connection between what your work and melodies that might have kind of continued through the ages?
Wow. No. There were some of the melodies were existing melodies that people will recognize from the synagogue that I have simply updated and applied the words in modern Hebrew very, very clearly, and maybe changed the positioning a little bit to make it make more sense to people who understand Hebrew. The others were really Carlabachian, from Shlomo Carlebach's melodies. Where they originated from, I'm not sure, because the truth is I never really listened to Shlomo Carlebach. It's just that I had heard of him, and I just needed something that was Jewishy to give me inspiration.
Listen to his stories, let alone his melody. I don't know if you got to hear his stories.
I have, but I can't relate to them. I can't relate to them. No, you got to remember, I come from a secular background. I can't relate to them. You know?
Okay.
when you're secular and you hear that somebody did this and that, and all of a sudden he saw this and that, you're like, really? You know,
okay.
It doesn't work.
Okay, I am touched by him. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with my upbringing. Maybe with how he resonates with my Jewishness. But yeah, I am moved to hear his stories. Again.
Okay, Netanel, let me put it to you another way. When I grew up, okay, as a secular guy, we used to think of people like you, if you speak Jewish, people wearing a kippah. They're strange. We thought of you as strange. We'd look at these guys, so we would be taught by guys wearing these white shirts and these black trousers, and they always had a black jacket. They were strange for us. These were people that we didn't normally mix with, and all of a sudden
in this particular case, you would be right, but
they were strange people. Okay, what I'm trying to say to you is, I come from that world, and I remember how we all used to think about this. We used to be sitting in these classes or whatever, and we used to be playing football with each other's legs. We used to have to go with shin pads. Okay, that was basically I remember sitting in Kenton Synagogue for my bar mitzvah. Okay, and all I remember is the guys next to me thinking, I better not sit next to him because he kicks too hard. Okay, that was how we grew up. Okay, we didn't understand a word. And we were just looking at the clock. We all remember where the clock was. When's it going to finish? When can we get out of there? We didn't understand a word. Okay. So I said, this is for those people who would like to easily, without breaking a sweat, understand it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when I wrote the book, when I did the Siddur, so we did the Siddur. I don't know if you probably can't see it.
No, but if you put it close to you yourself, we'll be able to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we see it.
Okay, so we did the Siddur. I wrote the Siddur, and when I was looking at the art scroll, which was the main one, that's a scholarly masterpiece. Okay, but there's no way that the average guy can access it, because you need to have a lot of knowledge in order to be able to access it. So what I did was I said, I'm going to make it so that you can use this, you can get everything you need out of it, and if you then want to graduate, you've got the route to graduate. That's what this was all about. Okay.
Beautiful. Simon, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I want to just tell you a story which I hope is amusing. A few years ago, my daughter graduated in classics from Queen's College, Cambridge. I went to the graduation and they had a lunch, and I'd had a few drinks by that stage, which is not unusual for me at lunchtime. And
it's always 5 p.m. somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. It's always gin and tonic time. That's right. I was sitting opposite Professor Diggle, Professor of Classics, and he's the model of J.K. Rowling took for Dumbledore. So I thought, I've actually got the top guy sitting in front of me. It's my time to ask a question. If I don't, I'll never have a chance again. So I said, well, classics is like Latin and Greek. Why doesn't it include Hebrew?
Exactly.
And he looked at me very seriously, and he thought about it. And he said, I don't know.
Yeah.
How's the top guy?
But that is such a, I've also thought that. I've never understood it, because Christianity is parts 1 and 2 of the Bible. We're just part 1, okay? So why do they not want to learn the language of
people here do want to learn it. By the way, I recommend to both of you Cyrus Gordon. Cyrus Gordon was an American scholar, and he wrote about Homer and the Bible, and about connection between ancient Greece, okay, classical, not Hellenistic, which is obviously strongly connected with the Jewish culture and the history of the Jewish people, but also classical Greek, like the Homeric epic poems and the Hebrews. Very interesting. So any other questions, guys?
I just want to say that question from Simon is fantastic, because that really, it's so true. Why? I've always wondered that. It makes no sense.
Nathaniel, can I give a partial answer to that? Because I have read somewhere that in one of the main church councils of Christianity, they said, we don't want to do anything with the Jews who killed our Messiah, and we don't want their language. I read it somewhere. I'm not sure.
I think that alongside that, the reasons might be more prosodic, because we have to remember that at the end of the day, during the late Second Temple period, Greek becomes the lingua franca for Jews as well. This is why we have the Septuagint. This is why we have Josephus writing in Greek. This is why we have Philo of Alexandria writing in Greek. Ezekiel, the tragedy writer, writing in Greek, and many other Jewish scholars, because at the time it's exactly like most Jews today would write in English. You know, I'm speaking now in English. Okay, I write my newsletters in English.
Yeah, but it is amazing though that a language that is so fundamental to Western civilization and to Christianity hasn't been studied more. It doesn't make sense.
It is studied. Listen, I should say that's my bread and butter.
You do.
Right, that's what I do for the past 11, 12 years. I teach people, mostly non-Jews, who want to learn Hebrew. So it's
okay. Well, Netanel, one of the reasons I translated the book into Mandarin and things was precisely that, because I thought it was important to try and spread, and I've done it in Portuguese, to spread the concept of Hebrew, because they can learn how to pronounce it in Ivrit, right, and they can see the translation. It might encourage people to learn the language.
It is beautiful work.
And beautiful language.
Could I say something, Nathan?
Yeah.
We were forcefully taken out from our how should I put it? Say our foundation language because of Rome.
That is also correct.
The first century, they killed, destroyed, and deceived.
Right. The Roman Empire definitely plays a role here, historically speaking. And Elliot?
Interesting.
Yes, thank you so much. I have thoroughly. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I really appreciate Richard, your passion.
Thank you.
Especially as a teacher, it really resonates with me. Like, you want to get the cookies on the bottom shelf, all right, so people can actually get to it. My question is, and I am one of those Christians who has a desire to learn Hebrew and for others to know it. How, in your journey, and I just heard a little bit of it, why do you think music, or what would you have to say about music and how it ties in to just for people to be interested in learning this? Because I'd love to be able to share this with other people here in the States, and now you've given me kind of a new thought to introduce Hebrew to people through this. So what kind of tips or things would you share in light of that?
Great question. If I give you all of these words, these prayers, and you just had to read them, it would be so boring, and it wouldn't inspire, it wouldn't lift your heart. Okay, when I look at Christians singing in churches, and you see the black Christians and their gospel singers, how beautiful it is and how much fun they're having, and they're all alive and they're loving it. I was like, well, why can't we sing? King David used to sing. King David used to say sing. Okay, right. He had a harp and everything else. Singing opens up the soul. It makes us all smile and it makes us all happy. We all get together. And if you're dealing with children, when you start with children, you start with teaching them how to sing together.
Right.
That's how you teach them language. You teach them little songs and things, and that's the beauty of the human soul. I think music appeals to everybody, and if you can basically say, listen, just go away and learn that, and let's all sing it together, you're going to put smiles on everybody's face. And if you just give them the phonetics and tell them, yeah, just go to the website, download it, it's free. It's free. You don't even have to pay for it. I joke with people. I said, don't worry about it. Even if you all listen on Spotify and everything else, you might all together, you might get me enough money for a cappuccino. Okay. You know,
well, hey, I appreciate
buy me a cappuccino. You know?
Excellent. So guys,
listen, Mr. Taylor, go for it. Go for it. Just teach them, get them singing. Just get them all singing. You know?
And then record it and put it on Facebook and tag Richard.
Give us a link, send it to us, and then
well, hey, I'll make this last statement. I know we're honoring your time here, but there's a couple of pastors in Uganda that I support.
Okay.
And so I was glad to hear that testimony from Uganda. So I have a couple of pastors that I'd love to reach out and start sharing this with. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. They've been amazing. I've had these I didn't even know they existed. These Jewish communities in Uganda who've contacted me, and it's like, wow. I know it's like knock me for six when these guys would come on and you see them dancing.
And they love to sing. They absolutely love to sing. Absolutely. So
beautiful.
And last but not least, Jean. Jean?
Yeah. Again, thank you so much. This is brilliant. I agree with Elliot.
Thank you.
I can already think of, even my sister-in-law is a secular Jew, but I can think of people this would really help. And I put in the chat box, listening to you, the reason that I wanted to do Hebrew and with Netanel, well, it happened with Netanel, was because I did Greek at Bible school and I wanted to know the language of part one.
Yeah.
You're only halfway there if you've got the Greek. But also, I want to really look up the YouTube or whatever, and I can think.
Please, and just spread the word and just get people singing. But you're right, and that's something else I never understood. Judaism and Christianity, you can't separate Christianity from Judaism because part one is Judaism. So. And that's why we're forever together. Our past was together, and our future will be together. You know, that's how I see it.
Okay, so Richard, thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Guys, go Google "We Sing, We Stay Together." Listen to something, record yourself or your friends, and spread it up.
Thank you very much. Now you got to tell me what to do.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Tomorrow we're not meeting. So next time we meet is Sunday. Sunday, we're continuing with the history of the Hebrew language. Next Monday, hopefully we'll have a friend of mine from the Ministry of Education in Israel talking about education in Israel and specifically coronavirus disease challenges and education in the future, and also an institution very interesting, the College for Statesmanship, which he helped to run, very interesting. Next Tuesday, we will have Professor Brettler, Mark Brettler, joining us, and we'll talk about the Bible and the Believer, as well as the Jewish annotated New Testament, which is very interesting, was done by him as well as Professor Amy G. Levine, and their upcoming book, The Bible with and Without Jesus, very interesting as well. So that's that, and I will see you Sunday, guys. Some of you might be, I'll see earlier.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Richard.
Pleasure. Love to everybody.
Love.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Shalom. Bye-bye.
Shalom.